John Summer.
Here.
Laura Williams. Linda Buckley. Here. Kate Elder. Karen Gardner. Here. John Finn. Greg Abel.
Have a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Purpose of contract negotiations.
Yep.
A second.
I got second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Five out. Very long.
And for introductions, for those that were not at our last meeting, Dr. Craig Onfrey is our interim superintendent. And welcome.
Thank you.
To the first official meeting. Introduce your staff.
I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to the opportunity of working with everyone. Those of you that know my background, although I was 23 years as a superintendent of schools, 10 of those was in Garrison, a K-8 district very similar to Greenwood Lake. And I find places like this very exciting places to be. And I know there's great things going on here, and I look forward to being a part of the team. So thank you.
Introduce our administration here.
Okay. Our elementary principal, Natasha Shea. And assistant superintendent for business, Ann Little.
This is from our captain. There are no special presentations tonight. In your package, you'll find the minutes of the organizational meeting, July 10th, 2013, the business meeting, July 10th, 2013, the special board meeting, July 31st, August 7th, and August 14th.
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Any public statement on agenda items? And before I read that, I just wanted to reiterate policy 1510, which basically says that we're going to try and limit conversations in the first round to 3 minutes. We have Greg who's graciously brought his iPad with the stopwatch, so with that.
I just had a quick question on item G in your consent items. We're authorizing another law firm, which is, I went through this with the board on reorganization, and you already have a law firm, and now we're authorizing a second law firm. What is this law firm going to be doing for us?
The first law firm is Shaw, is our regular counsel, but probably 98% of the business. Anything to do with the high school issue or anything like that, we merge with the conflict of interest. This is the firm that we used in the past. No other public statements? Please find in your packet the Tennessee Union Free School District regular meeting minutes for June 13th. And the treasurer's report.
Please accept the financial reports for July, including the bank balance, the claims auditor report, warrants, the revenue status report, the budget status report, and the transfers.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, following the outline of the agenda, first under curriculum, we have no items on the agenda for tonight. However, for future meetings, we will make a regular habit of having some type of educational presentation at that time. And one of the first things I know that is on people's mind happen to be Common Core, test results, what districts are doing, so that's likely to be a September item that we will be talking about. Under finance, we have two items. The superintendent recommends that the board make the following resolutions. A custodial unit, MOA 2013 through 2016. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby ratifies the provisions of a memorandum of agreement dated June 27, 2013, between the Greenwood Lake Union Free School District and the school custodial staff, represented by Local 74 United Service Workers Unions, for a 3-year successor collectively negotiated agreement effective July 1, 2013 through June 30, 2016, and authorizes the expenditure of those monies necessary to implement the economic provisions of the parties' 2013 through 2016 collectively negotiated agreement. A copy of this agreement shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting. Item B, school lunch fund deficit. Be it resolved that in order to cover the anticipated budget shortfall, the Board of Education hereby amends the 2012-13 original budget in the amount of $30,000 funds are to be transferred to the school lunch fund from the general fund.
Do I have a motion?
Motion approved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Personnel. The superintendent recommends that the board approve the following resolutions. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the following. A resignation. Paula Truzewick as teaching assistant effective July 14, 2013. Aaron J. McGowan as elementary school reading specialist effective July 19, 2013. Kathleen Martin, bus driver, effective July 26, 2013. Nagla El-Saka as science, family, consumer science, effective August 14, 2013. Kelly Fox as teaching assistant, effective August 14, 2013. Item B, interview committee. Stephanie Brown and Susan Cement, 2 days retroactive, calculated at 1/200 of the 2013-2014 contractual base salary. Instructional appointments, and I believe some of these people are in the audience tonight, but be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education, in accordance with the terms of the collectively negotiated agreement between the Greenwood Lake Teachers Association and the district, hereby appoints Nagla El-Saka to a 2-year probationary term as a Spanish teacher in the grade 7-12 foreign language tenure area effective September 1, 2013 through August 31, 2015 at the contractual rate of Masters 30, Step 9, $75,822. 2, Amy Elizabeth Cordisco to a 2-year probationary term as elementary librarian teacher, effective date September 1, 2013 and through August 31, 2015 in the library elementary teacher tenure area at the contractual rate of Masters 5, $64,385. Kelly Fox to a 3-year probationary term as a middle school special education inclusion teacher, effective date September 1, 2013 through August 31st, 2016 in the special education tenure area at the contractual rate of Masters 1, $55,630. Jacqueline Miller to a 3-year probationary term as 5th grade teacher, effective date September 1, 2013 and through August 31st, 2016 in the elementary 1-6 tenure area at the contractual rate of Masters 1, $55,630. 5, Edna Arvels to a 2-year probationary term as middle school library media specialist, effective date September 1, 2013 and through August 31, 2015 in the library media specialist tenure area at the contractual rate of Masters 30, Step 3, $62,152. Number 6, Nicole Pelletier to a 3-year probationary term as reading specialist, effective date September 1, 2013 and through August 31, 2016 in the reading specialist tenure area at the contractual rate, Masters, Step 2, $57,595. And 7, Allie Creedon to a 3-year probationary term as teaching assistant, effective date of September 1, 2013, and through April 22nd, 2016, in the teaching assistant tenure area at the contractual rate of $23,929.20. Just as a point of interest, in case people wonder why some of the probationary periods are 3 years and others are 2 years, it's really covered through the education law. Once a person has been tenured in another teaching position and has received tenure, then their next, when they switch to another area of job, the probationary period is 2 years as opposed to the normal 3 years. Civil service. Paulette Truitz as a clerk in the competitive class of the civil service to serve the maximum probationary period permitted by law at $26,500, prorated to the effective date of July 15, 2013. Adelina Lynn as a school bus driver in the non-competitive class of the civil service to serve the maximum probationary period permitted by the collectively negotiated agreement between the Greenwood Lake Bus Drivers Association and the district at the probation rate of $16.33. Middle School Library and Media Center. Approved Edna Arfeld to organize the Library and Media Center in preparation of students not to exceed 3 days, calculated at 1/200 of the 2013-2014 contractual base salary. And F, abolish the position. Whereas the board, for reasons of economy and efficiency, has determined that it is appropriate to abolish a certain pedagogical position in the district, now therefore be it resolved that the board hereby abolishes 1.0 full-time equivalent teaching assistant tenure area position, effective close of business on June 30th, 2013. Be it further resolved that the board clerk is hereby directed to provide written notice to the least senior employee in the tenure area who is being laid off due to the abolition of the above referenced position, effective close of business June 30th, 2013, in accordance with the provisions of Section 3013 of the Education Law as set forth in a memorandum to the board from the superintendent of schools dated June 14, 2013. Be it further resolved, the employee shall be notified in writing of placement on a preferred eligibility list in the tenure area of their employment regarding their statutory recall rights. Item G, fall sports coaches stipends at a contractual rate of $2,160. Girls modified soccer, William Cron, plus longevity payment of $100. Boys modified soccer, Matthew Friedman. Boys modified cross country, Elizabeth King, plus longevity payment of $200. And girls modified volleyball, Alex Benel.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Congratulations, everybody. For board operations, we have a few items. One is be resolved the Board of Education hire Dr. Vincent Ola of the Western New York Education Service Council to conduct superintendent search, professional consultant fees, $5,000, paid to do installments plus out-of-pocket expenses as per contract. Be it further resolved the Board of Education authorizes the Western New York Educational Service Council to process candidate credentials, including establishing a file folder for each candidate, mailing and brochures, stationery, postage, and clerical costs at a flat fee of $2,500. Have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Any discussion? I know there's been some talk in the community about where we were, how we were progressing in finding a permanent superintendent. The meetings we were having, we were interviewing search firms, and this is the final of that. We're hiring Dr. Vincent Nicola to do our superintendent search. All in favor? 5-0. By unanimous consent, we're waiving the right to a second reading and complete the adoption of the policies after this first reading. There are two of them. One is the organizational chart. Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the inclusion of the following revisions to policy 4212, organizational chart, incorporating the following as the first reading and adoption. Motion? Motion. Second? Discussion? Primarily, this was to have the deputy superintendent report to the superintendent, along with the curriculum person being responsible for the technology specialist and also the technology teaching specialist. I know instructional technologist and network specialist. So we're doing this because it's not necessarily normally we would have two readings and we'd be adopting after the second meeting, but there really is nothing worth talking about at the same time. All in favor? 5-0. The next is an agenda format policy, 1511. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the inclusion of the following revision to policy 1511, agenda format, incorporating the following as the first reading and adoption. Motion? Motion. Second. And discussion? And were there copies of this? Not budget. Basically, after a board retreat, the board wants to be more public friendly. And we thought that having people wait throughout the entire meeting to have a discussion, that we were putting people who had small kids in the light at a disadvantage. So we came up with a new way of running our meetings, and I'll read through. Basically, call to order, roll call, pledge of allegiance, and welcome, at which point that was basically did now. The second part will be a workshop section of the meeting. There will be student presentations, whether that's a middle school, elementary school, or high school students that want to come and make a presentation to the board. Other presentations, whether it's the administrators, Dr. Onifrey talked about having a presentation on test scores and all that. That would be part of that section. There would then be the PTSA section report along with the village liaison report, at which point we will have one section of public statements, and that would be anything that has happened, anything that is on the agenda to be voted on. At which point there would be a proposed executive session, and then we would go on with the rest of the meeting. The logic being that after we had the public statements, that you would be, if we would like you to hang around, but you don't have to hang around, you could at that point go home when we do more the mundane motions of approving various contracts and the like. So we're trying to make it much more public friendly, and this is one of the first steps into doing that. After the proposed executive session, the approval of minutes, correspondence to the board, business reports, superintendent report, committees on special education, board member report, old business, new business, next meeting adjourned. Any other discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, on with the consent items. Item D, authorize the execution of the APPR implementation certification form. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the board president and superintendent of schools to execute the implementation certification form for its annual professional performance review for classroom teachers and building principals covered pursuant to Education Law, Section 3012C and Part 32 of the Rules of the Board of Regents. basically in plain English, the state is looking for districts to authorize state that they do have an APPR plan in place, even though a new one is in the process of being negotiated within the district. They've given districts the August 30th deadline to certify a plan, so we are using the one that is currently in place, and so we'll send it up to the state tomorrow, as they were threatening loss of state aid if you didn't do something if you didn't authorize it by August 30th. And then in the future, once the new APPR plan is finalized, then we'll bring it back to the vote agenda at that time. Orange County School Safety and Security Grant, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the interim superintendent of schools to execute the Orange County School Safety and Security Funding Grant Memorandum of Understanding in the amount of $19,922.80 to enhance school safety and security. Transportation route approval. Whereas transportation of students policy number 5720 provides for the transportation of non-public school students and students with disabilities. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves transportation routes to the following schools: Chester Academy, Warwick Valley High School, Georgia Baker High School, Burke, Ringwood, Sacred Heart, St. Catherine, St. Stephen's, Orange Ulster Boces at Arden Hill, Chester Learning Center, Minnesink Middle School, Otisville Elementary School, Orange Ulster Boces Goshen, Sanfordville Elementary School, Warwick Middle School, Clearview, Jesse Kaplan, Link Elementary School, Riverview High School, Rockland Boces, St. Dominic's, and Suffern High School. And special counsel to authorize the superintendent of schools to engage Lamb and Barnowski LLP as special counsel on matters assigned for the 2013-2014 school year at an hourly rate at $250 per hour for attorney's time and not more than $135 per hour for paralegal services.
Motion to approve?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Administrator updates. Natasha?
On behalf of both buildings, we're just preparing for school, we're getting the buildings ready. We had quite a few projects this year, but they seem to be coming along very nicely. That's it.
I did provide the board with an update on enrollment. As you see that we've been monitoring for both the elementary schools and high school enrollment. You are seeing a slight increase in the K enrollment. Not significant, but has been a slight increase there.
Do we have an update on the middle school? We're all the construction is all ready, we're all set for September.
And you want to provide?
Is kindergarten still 67?
Up at the middle school, the major HVAC components of the capital project are completely installed. All classrooms have functioning unit ventilators. The contractors are balancing the unit ventilators. The pipe insulation installation in the building is expected to be completed by Friday. The fire alarm system wiring phase of the project will continue through September 4th. The fire alarm system cutover will happen after school hours the week of September 13th. The old alarm system will remain operational until the cutover. Classrooms are being prepared for student return. The Cisco phone upgrade is 90% complete. The migration from Novell to Active Directory is complete. The Gmail conversion is done. The software hardware upgrades are complete. We installed a new UPS and a new SAN. Microsoft Campus Agreement is done. The instructional computers, we purchased 287 of them who are imaged. The elementary computers are installed. And the middle school computer rollout continues and should be done by Tuesday. We have 7 smart boards on back order. The media center is almost complete. The security cameras, part of the Orange County grant that we just approved, are scheduled for installation next week. With reference to the signs, the footings have been installed in both buildings. The support posts are scheduled for installation next week. The signs aren't scheduled to ship until August 28th, so the signs won't be ready for the start of school. But shortly after that, they should be up and running about the second and third week in September.
I just want to thank the administration, the golf course, everybody, and that was a lot of work for us to do out here, and organizations, and with that. Thank you very much for getting everything out of the school.
I want to thank Dr. Novick too about his presentation of the 2 problems that we had in middle school, the explosion of the pipe drill and the fire drill. He immediately gave us that notice in our mailbox. Long time coming. Thank you very much.
The only thing I would add overall is that, as everyone knows, summer has a way of disappearing quickly, and we're almost at that point. Our school year will open up right after Labor Day with 2 superintendent conference days. I think we have a good program outlined for those days. And as we close for Rosh Hashanah, and then students' first day is on Friday. So it's almost upon us.
The Committee on Special Education enclosing the packet for your approval, article of the minutes from the Committee on Preschool Special Education meetings held July 21 and August 12, 2013, and the Committee on Special Education meetings held July 24 and August 8 and 12, 2013.
Motion to approve recommendations.
Second. Discussion. All in favor? 5-0. Board member reports. So normally I wait, but
Should I mention our mailbox with that paperless memo we got? It was blank.
I don't know if anyone saw in the onboard, but Common Core tests are going to be costing us $29.50 per student, up from the approximately $13 per student. So it's just another example of an underfunded mandate we have from the state. The Orange County School Board is having their first meeting on the first Wednesday in September. And Roseanne Sullivan was on the resolutions committee. However, because of her accident, they asked me to fill in, so I was actually at the all day on Monday to go over all the resolutions. It was a very interesting meeting, having representatives from all around the state discussing the resolutions that we're going to be voting on in Rochester. There is no old business. There is no new business at this point. Is there a PTSA report? Village or village? Liaison? Yeah. Okay. And privilege of the floor? No, microphone. Yes, and sideway, opposite.
Yes, I never go over 15 minutes. It's not our road. As unit co-presidents, we would like to welcome Dr. Onifrey to our district. As we are sure you already know how wonderful we are here, and we wish you much success, and we hope you enjoy being here in our district. On that note, we have a couple of questions for you. Back in June, I believe, there was a resolution to have a greeter in both schools. I did speak with Anne recently regarding this. I was just wondering if there's been any change, because September is just a few weeks away and we don't have a greeter in our buildings. Wondering if there was any discussion regarding that.
At this point, we haven't come to close on that. But I am meeting tomorrow with my administrative cabinet first meeting, and that is one of the topics we'll be discussing. As you know, I'm still catching up on a few things, and we'll have that discussion, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
We would also like to request a copy of the reorganizational chart, if we may. And mostly, excuse me? Absolutely. Okay. But mostly tonight, we'd like to address the board on an issue that we thought was going to be resolved by Dr. Richard Raquel, and that was having a sink in the art classroom here at the elementary building. As of tonight, we walked around to the art room and there is still no installation of a sink. As a union, we are very hard pressed to come up with any kind of intellectual excuse as to why there is no sink present in an elementary classroom, art classroom. If you could share or enlighten us on any of that, please.
And just so you know, we were told that the plumbing, we believe, is already there in the classroom, and that it just has to possibly reinstalled, but it just doesn't make.
I've heard two thoughts,
Okay.
two statements on that. One that it may have been there one time, and one that may not be there now. If it's not there, it's a little more complicated than just putting something in. And it may have to wait for some type of an approved SED facilities project, so that proper aid and things are done properly. If it's there and it's a simple project, then that could be something different. I'll have to check into it and see what the reality is and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
We're just asking you to please give this your utmost attention, as school is just around the block, and the kids, they're elementary students, and having a sink in a classroom, in an art classroom is, as we all know, extremely important. Thank you.
Yeah, and in the future, it's certainly right that I'm there too, but I've been in the district in my office. You're more than welcome to just stop by and have this conversation rather than
We appreciate
waiting.
that, but this was
Thank
something
you.
that was supposed to be resolved already. So prior to you, it was supposed to be a done deal.
Okay.
So just so you understand.
Did anyone from the board and district ever responded to the Times Herald Record editorial from 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago? I assume not, because I didn't see anything.
There's a lot.
Greenwood Lake is top-heavy editorial.
We as a board are not generally, I was told by a couple of wise people, people who buy the mail. Whether we're top heavy or not, I would say if you compare us to surrounding districts, we're not top heavy. Thank you for your comment.
In that vein, we may not want to respond to the Times Herald Record's opinions, but we still believe that this board needs to find some way to address the inaccurate, misleading, emotional, and untrue information that persists on social media sites about this district and about what goes on in this district. And again, I have to say, if we're willing to spend $60,000 on two billboards, which are going to be backed up by generators, we should be investing in somebody to put accurate information on our own website, current information. And piggybacking on something I had to say at the last regular meeting, unfortunately our tuxedo liaison is not here tonight, but I would like the board to formulate a list of questions that our liaison should be asking at Tuxedo's meeting. The first of which is, what is the total cost of operating Baker High School? In the future, how can we possibly figure a tuition rate if we don't know what it costs them to operate a high school? We know that Seneca Falls is not a realistic number. And I think we need to come up with something much more realistic than what we're paying now. There are also many unanswered questions because people come up to me and ask me about what is going on with the STEM Academy. What is the STEM Academy? What will our students be facing there? Does anybody know? Can anybody explain that from our board? I assume the answer is no. Can students opt out of the STEM curriculum? And basically to piggyback off the operating expense, if Baker High is able to attract many students from out of district, not including Greenwood Lake, obviously we're out of district too, and there's a substantial increase in revenue to that district, shouldn't we be apprised of what that is? Doesn't that figure into the operating expense and consequently what we should be paying for tuition? I just don't feel that we can, beyond the 22-month contract that we have, just make all these assumptions and assume we're just going to go forward. And basically, one other question I had was, when is Dr. Brockell's report on the charter school situation due? And do we know if Tuxedo is moving ahead with that, or have they gone forward?
Thank you. There were a bunch of questions in there.
Nobody else wants to speak. I
I think this board, along with our interim superintendent, wants to work on the education of their students in either two buildings. We have a 22-month contract. We know 22 months is going to run very fast. But we need to concentrate on the students that are in our building right now. That's not to say that a timeline and a process can't be discussed and talk about and put into motion. But we need to really concentrate, especially when you look at the test scores, whether we say they lowered the bar or not. We need to concentrate on the education of the kids in our two buildings right now. We have a 22-month contract starting in 10 days. And we will work on a process and a timeline. We really need to get back to educate all of our children and not have meetings concentrate purely on the high school at this point.
I think that should be the education. I have something. I don't know if any of you saw it, there was an article in the Daily News.
Anybody else have any comments?
Can you just clarify, you said 22-month contract starts in 10 days?
September 1.
It's my understanding it started last September 1, it starts with the new freshman.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
There was an article in the Daily News, which was published on August 8th by Diane Ravitch, who I was not aware of her, but I understand she's a former federal secretary of education and an expert in the field of education. This is an excellent article. It was called Punishing Kids for Adult Failures, the Massive Score Drop on Tough New York Test Gives Us an Opportunity and an Obligation to Change Course. And I don't know if you haven't seen it, I'd like to read a few excerpts. Ms. Ravitch is not a fan of Common Core, nor is she a fan of charter schools. But in this article, she says the Common Core has never been subject to trial or field testing anywhere. No one knows whether it predicts or measures readiness for college or careers. No one can explain why all 8-year-old students in America should be tested to see if they are on a path for college. As for careers, most of them probably want to be cowboys, or police officers, or astronauts. She goes on to say that one certain result of the Common Core standards is that they cause test scores to plummet. Kentucky saw its passing rates fall by 30 percentage points using the Common Core. New York students have experienced the same lows. She goes on to criticize the tests. Obviously, standards are one thing, making tests more difficult just for the sake of raising an artificial bar is another. And basically, she blames education officials. And the reason that I found this article so interesting is that the one thing you did manage to post on our website was that message from Commissioner John King, the New York Commissioner of Education, which I found highly insulting as a grandparent whose grandson will be starting school here in September, talking about the test scores, and we shouldn't place too much emphasis on them. Ms. Ravitch says the scores should not be taken seriously. There is no science involved in setting the passing mark on a test. It's a judgment call. It is subjective. State Education Commissioner John King and Regents Chancellor Merrill Tisch could set the passing mark wherever they choose. They chose to raise the bar so high that most students would fail. It's not just the logic of the reformers that's a problem here. The tests themselves are riddled with problems. Last spring, the Daily News obtained a copy of the 5th grade state reading test. I reviewed it and compared it with the national test administered by the federal government. She goes on to criticize the test. We were asking 5th graders to answer questions that 8th graders would probably have problems with. And she finishes up by saying the madness must end. Next spring, parents should keep their children home on testing day or send them to school with a note saying they are opting out of state testing. They should exercise their rights as citizens and send a message to the state, not with my child.
I'll say, from a policy standpoint, the board has to follow the federal and state regulations. So a lot of what you said should be addressed to our federal and state legislators. For the rest of it, we're turning it over to our education.
Part, I don't disagree with her. The state is really going overboard on the amount of testing that is occurring. The emphasis, because sometimes it makes educators worry more about the results and the test itself as opposed to just plain old-fashioned good teaching. And the problem is whenever districts talk to rebel against things of that, or, they hold out, the state holds this hammer up there, and it has to do with funding the schools. So the schools have to do the best we can while those laws and policies are in place to do what we can. But I think most schools that are being wise about it, balanced approach. I mean, we need to look at test scores. We need to look at results. We need to look at teaching and learning and how we can get the children to do better. I mean, that's all positive and good things. The overemphasis on tests is something that we shouldn't do, but we just have to balance it because we know people are judging us by those results as well. Good or bad, it's happening, and newspapers like to put in other comparisons. The state likes to do it as well. But there's article after article out there that is anti, the core standards and all the additional testing. How much that groundswell will grow, I'm really not sure at this time. People will certainly watch it, but for now, the one premise you can't argue with is you do want children to know more. The world they are going to enter is so much different than the world we may have entered. It is certainly more globally competitive, and so children have to learn to a higher standard, and it's all about balance. And we're certainly going to monitor it. We're going to do the best we can. We'll certainly be looking at things and adjusting programs, looking to make incremental improvements in areas. And we'll just see where the state goes with the whole process.
My concern, is well, of course, from what I've seen of Common Core, I'm not sure the students are going to know more when they graduate, but financial consensus. This is another, as Ron mentioned, another unfunded mandate, and given the financial situation. As far as tying, adherence to these new regulations to school funding, I don't think school funding can get much worse in New York State. Obviously, it probably isn't going to get any better, but I'm not sure it's going to get much worse, given the fact that our levy cap is going to be well below 2% for the coming year, and our tuition savings will be gone. That being said, I just have one other quick thing to say. I still believe that the district needs to hire a consultant. I know you want to discuss education, but the high school issue has got to come up sometime during this coming school year. And I'm assuming you're going to have to do it as soon after January as possible to make sure that the process plays itself out and the 8th grade parents have a chance to make their decisions by next January and look at the different schools that are going to be in there. Because of the emotional nature of this issue and all the misinformation that's out there, I believe you have to do the same thing that Tuxedo did when they were facing their economic Armageddon, should we have left there completely. You need to hire somebody objective to come in and put the facts before the public, the parents, the taxpayers, and this board. Because nobody is going to put any credence on anything that you come up with or that I come up with as a private citizen or a committee comes up with if we establish another high school options committee. I believe you're going to have to hire from outside, bring in an objective expert to lay out the financial considerations that we're going to be facing. And I'm not sure we shouldn't be doing that on a curriculum basis because we don't know what our high school students are going to be facing. In addition to core curriculum, they're facing additional STEM academy courses and possibly conversion charters in that academy. I think we need to get some basic information and make sure that we have the facts before we move forward with an additional contract that includes Tuxedo in the choice model. Thank you very much.
The next meeting is Wednesday, October 28th, 2013. So, Wednesday. It's Wednesday. The one thing that is not on our agenda, the business office did send all the information up to the county to do the STAR taxes. We did not get that back. I will say, in talking with the business office, that the levy increase was 1.1, which translates to a tax levy net, because there was some growth, believe it or not, within Greenwood Lake, of 0.75%. That represents $1.13 per thousand. Roughly on a $30,000 assessed home, that's $34, and on a $60,000 assessed home, that's $68. So there was actually $355,000 worth of growth within Greenwood Lake. So there will be a meeting next Wednesday to at least address the tax levy. It will be here, and quite possibly, if you are also in Disney, you can come meet me wherever you figure out how that may be. If you need a form, I may be available by phone from Disney. And as with the open meetings law, you're allowed to come here, or you're allowed to meet me if a board member happens to be, so long as it's published ahead of time. With that, after the August 28th meeting, there will be a September 18th meeting, which will be our November meeting here at the elementary school. And do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? Any discussion? I do have one thing. How is the volume been? Still not? No. I was going to.
You guys are good. This was the.
All right.